Spoštovano občinstvo, lepo pozdravljeni
Dear audience, welcome to the International Forum on Translation and Interpreting 2025. We're very happy to greet you here, dear translators, interpreters, professors, and students from Slovenia, as well as your colleagues who came to this forum to Ljubljana from Austria, Belgium, Croatia, Italy, and Serbia. Today's event is a conclusion, but not just a conclusion. It is also the culmination of the end of the meeting of the Council of the International Federation of Translators. The International Federation of Translation, in its original French, Fédération Internationale des Traducteurs, was established in Paris already in 1953. The Council of this international federation was met for the first time in Ljubljana this week with observers and advisors from 21 countries. All thanks to Mrs. Viktorija Osolnik-Kunc, who is also a member of the Council of the International Federation of Translations, and of course, thanks to the Association of Permanent Court Interpreters and Legal Translators of Slovenia, SCIT. This was also the last working meeting of this council after its 3-year term from 2025 to 2025. The Council of the International Federation of Translation is made up out of representatives from 17 different countries and other representatives from the regions around the world. Please allow me to introduce the members of the Council, as well as the President of the regional centers and the honorary advisors of FIT. The members of the Council are Mrs. Alison Rodriguez, who is the President of FIT and comes from New Zealand. Mrs. Alexandra Janter-Kalber, the General Secretary, who comes from Austria. Iris Grechen-Gonzalez Nedo, Treasury, who came from Cuba. And Vice Presidents of the Council, and Mrs. Anna Schiller from Ireland, Mrs. Alejandra Jorge from Argentina, and Mrs. Eleanor Cornelius from South Africa. The other members of the Council, Mrs. Tina Tuminen from Finland, Mrs. Victoria Lei-Chenlei from Macau, Mrs. Olga Egorova from Russia, Mrs. Marta Moros-Seret from Spain, Mr. Ness from Norway, Mr. Gao Anming from China, from Slovenia, Mrs. Viktorija Osolnik-Kunc, and from Malaysia, Hasuri Che Omar. And Mrs. Rula Kamal Salam from Canada, Mr. Guillaume Denefoubourg from Belgium, and Mr. Jürgen Christian Nielsen from Denmark. In addition, we are also joined by the President of the Regional Centers of FIT, Mr. Alan Melby, the Chair of the FIT of North America, and Mr. Shi-Yung Yutang, President of the FIT of Asia. And the honorary advisors of FIT, Mr. Henry Liu from New Zealand and Mr. Andrew Evans from Luxembourg. I would also like to mention that there are also here with us today the representatives of the World Intellectual Property Organizations that came here from Geneva. Now I would like to ask Mrs. Viktorija Osolnik-Kunc to the floor and to share some of her thoughts with us. Thank you.
Hvala lepa.
Thank you for the floor.
Spoštovano občinstvo,
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, distinguished representatives of the Federation, SCIT, representatives of the World Intellectual Property Organization, distinguished representatives of other delegations and organizations, and especially dear translators and interpreters from Slovenia and many other countries. Thank you to all for deciding to honor this event here in Ljubljana today. FIT Council, the Council of the International Federation of Translators and Interpreters, is for the first time having its meeting in Slovenia. I believe that as a representative of the Council and as a host, I think I have to present this small world in a big world in Slovenia to our professional public, the interpreters and translators of Slovenia. The Slovenes are very good in sports, in art, in science. We are doing very well, we are good, we are excellent. But this event today will certainly be another piece in the mosaic of our excellence in Slovenia. Also in the area of translation and interpreting. So we are certainly good, the excellent, and the most excellent, no matter how grammatically incorrect it may be. Thank you, and I am giving the floor to our moderator. So thank you is my basic message.
Gospa Viktorija Osvojnik-Kunc, hvala za vaše besede.
Thank you for your words, Mrs. Victoria Osvojnik-Kunc.
Podnaslov današnjega
The
foruma
subheading of today's forum has a meaningful message, which clearly shows what the core of today's discussion will be regarding translation and interpreting, the power of words and the intelligent future. The forum will be exploring the relation between human beings and technology in the field of translation and interpreting. We're going to discuss possible positive sides as well as the possible risks. It teaches us how to live with it. So today's experts will shine a light to the role of human beings in their relation to technology and the possibilities that arise with this. We're going to discuss the possible risks of over-relying on technology. The forum therefore aims to be a thought-provoking discussion on the, so to say, pivotal moment, a period when technology is increasingly shaping the future of language services. So let us be accompanied by this thought from our author Boris Anovak, who talked about the power of translated words. He said that translation is an art. It takes the respect of the original text, but also a freedom to preserve the soul and the meaning of the translation. But before we get into the flow of the debate that's going to be moderated by Mr. Deloney, allow me to say a few words about him and about the experts that are going to present different but key themes from the field of translation and interpreting. Of course, you are very welcome to join in on the discussion at the end with your questions. Mr. Guy Delony is a British journalist, and as a correspondent based in Ljubljana, he reports on Slovenia, the Balkans, and the Middle East for the BBC News, the Monocle magazine, and the Monocle radio. In his news pieces, he covers very serious and difficult themes like the migration crisis in Europe, as well as war crimes, but also lighter topics as the arrest of Novak Djokovic in Australia. And as I said, Mr. Delony will be the moderator of today's event.
Gospa je predsednica.
Mrs. Alison Rodriguez is the president of the International Federation of Translators and represents the New Zealand's Translators and Interpreters Association. Mrs. Rodriguez is a linguist and a translator, specializing in law, human rights, and technical fields. Her efforts to promote International Translation Day, that is the 30th of September, a day to celebrate the work of translators, interpreters, and terminologists, deserve special attention. Mrs. Rodriguez will give a presentation on global trends in the translation and interpreting profession. Academician Ivan Bratko. He's a full professor of computer sciences at the Faculty of Computer Science and Informatics at the University of Ljubljana. Academician Bratko is the founding father of artificial intelligence in Slovenia and internationally one of the pioneers of machine translation and learning. He's the author of more than 200 scientific papers and numerous books, including Prologue, his most frequently cited work. Academician Bratko is a member of the Slovenian Academy of Sciences and Arts, and his topic today is artificial intelligence.
Redna profesorica
Dr. Mojca Schlamberger-Brezar. She's a full professor and dean of the Faculty of Arts at the University of Ljubljana. At the Department of Translation Studies, Dr. Schlamberger-Brezar teaches French and linguistics. She specializes in contrastive grammar and translation from French into Slovene. Dr. Schlamberger-Brezar will give a presentation on the training of future translators and interpreters in Slovenia. Mr. Jan Christopher Ness. He's a member of the Council of SCIT and the Vice President of the Norwegian Association of Literary Translators. Mr. Ness is also a translator and writer, author of novels, children's and young people's literature. His topic today is copyright in translation.
Redni profesor Alan Melby.
Full Professor Alan Melby is the president of the Regional Center of SCIT of North America and Professor Emeritus at Brigham Young University in the USA, where he taught general linguistics and translation technology. Professor Melby is developing translation labeling, which is important to distinguish between translations created by AI alone and translations reviewed by a translator without the use of AI. Professor Melby will therefore present what is known as the Labels Project.
Redna profesorica
Full Professor Dr. Tina Tominen. She's a member of the Council of the International Federation of Translators and a professor of English, focusing on translation at the University of Turku in Finland. Her research focuses on subtitling and, in particular, on the response of audience and the professional community of audiovisual translators. Therefore, as an expert, one could say, person from the field, she will present us audiovisual translation.
Magistrica
Viktoria Osolnik-Kunc is a member of the Council of the International Federation of Translation. She's the first Slovene representative in this highest international body of translators. And to reiterate, she's also the host of today's international forum. Mrs. Osolnik-Kunc teaches German translation and other professional subjects at the Department of German Studies at the Faculty of Arts at the University of Ljubljana. Today, she will present her thoughts on the purpose of the standards for continuing professional training and development and present good practices in this field.
Dr. Henry Liu.
Dr. Henry Liu is a former president of the International Federation of Translators and its honorary advisor. Dr. Liu is also a special advisor to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of New Zealand. He's an experienced speaker and an insightful futurist. He's considered one of the best court and diplomatic interpreters in the world, and as an experienced court and diplomatic interpreter, he will give us his insight into court interpreting and legal translation. But before I give the floor to Mr. Deloney, I would have to mention that in parallel, elections are being held for the members of SCIT, Association of Permanent Court Interpreters and Legal Translators of Slovenia, to serve on the committees for the new term from 25 to 28. And the results of the elections will be presented during the event, at the end. Dear Mr. Deloney and distinguished speakers, I am giving you the floor.
Thank you very much indeed, Mojca. I wanted to start with an apology to my colleagues in the booth because I'm going to do something straight off the cuff and it's untranslatable. At least I think it is, anyway. As Mojca mentioned there, I am a journalist. I've been a journalist for more than 30 years, and for the past 20 years, I have been a foreign correspondent. So it will come as no surprise to any of you that I have relied a great deal in my professional life on the work of interpreters and translators. This also applies to my personal life, which I'll get to in a second. But this untranslatable thing, this came up quite recently. I posted about it on Blue Sky, because what I do every morning covering 8 different countries is I go through all the different news sources on my patch. So not just Slovenia, but Croatia, Serbia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Montenegro, Macedonia, North Macedonia, beg your pardon. I mean, they wouldn't mind if I said that there, but really it's a no-no on air these days. But, you know, all these different countries. And of course, there are many different languages. So, and I really don't speak them all, and certainly not to the degree that I can quickly go through the newspapers. So generally, I rely on the translation in Google Chrome. Though recently, Firefox has activated its own form of translation. And I prefer Firefox as a browser for numerous reasons. And you should all prefer it, to be honest with you, because I think Google gave up on that "don't be evil" thing a while ago now. So please consider switching to Firefox, but maybe not for the translation. Because you may be aware that today there's something happening in Serbia, or was due to happen in Serbia, which is that they were due to perhaps lose their access to oil. And this is because of sanctions which were going to be put in place by the United States on Serbia's oil company, NIS, because NIS is majority owned by Gazprom Neft, which is Russian, and that is beyond the pale as far as most of the world is concerned. So they haven't divested these shares, and interesting things may happen. But this is the way that Firefox Translate interpreted this. The nutment of the NIS would be complete madness. Anybody? I mean, I think it's a beautiful coinage, the nutment. I've been trying to use it in my daily life wherever possible. This is a complete nutment. I'm not sure if it would work on air, but I'm willing to give it a go. But I think this is illustrative of, straight off, in my profession, why it is that we can't just rely on machine interpretation, machine translation. We can't do it. It can be a help. I'll tell you one other thing which nearly got me into trouble. You will not be surprised to hear that I've been, as Mojca mentioned, dealing with the courts, the ICTY, the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, for many years. Ratko Mladic, of course, a big figure there. How does a machine translator interpret Mladic, the young man? Yeah, that threw me momentarily when I was reading that story. So I am extremely grateful for the expertise in this room and beyond in my work. Just past couple of weeks has been very busy. I was exchanging conversation with President Vučić of Serbia recently. Often we do this in English, but this time it was in a media conference. So of course, the interpreter was very much involved. This was all going out on live TV, which is why the personal exchanges were a little bit mortifying to me, because I have known Vučić for a long time, but you don't want to appear to be too familiar on live TV, especially when you're asking him what is meant to be an awkward question about the protest in his country. But there we are. We also really could have done with a professional interpreter when I was in Kočan for this terrible tragedy that happened in North Macedonia with a nightclub fire. My crew was Serbian, and we had 2 people, in fact, from Serbia, myself, and the people who worked in the one cafe in town that was open. So we were going from Macedonian to Serbian and Serbian into English. It was suboptimal, shall we say. And one of my favorite encounters with the work of professional interpreters was actually during my years in Cambodia. I lived there for 8 years. And there are many, many different languages spoken in Cambodia. Most people do not know this. The majority language is Khmer, but there are plenty of other languages, and more than a dozen spoken by the hill tribes in Cambodia. So on one occasion, when I was reporting from these areas in the north of Cambodia, Ratanakiri province, we had to have one interpreter going from the tribal language Jarai into Khmer, which is the main language, and then another one going from Khmer into English for my benefit. So that was quite a job, and I think they did a very good one. And again, I was very grateful for that. My personal life, I would not be standing here today were it not for the work of court-appointed translators here in Slovenia who were able to translate reams of documentation. A lot of the Slovenian people in this room will know all about Slovenian bureaucracy. Well, rest assured, I do too. So I would just, if you don't mind, may I just take a second to applaud you all, because I would not be able to carry on my life, and I would not have been able to do what I've been doing for the past 20 years without the work of professional translators and interpreters. Believe me, I appreciate you. But what I want to do most of all is now fade into the background and talk to these esteemed experts on this panel, and to you know, I think where we came in with nutment is probably a good place to start, isn't it? Because Alison, I think when we look at what you've put down, the current trends in translation and interpretation, there is only one phrase on people's lips, and that's artificial intelligence. What do you take, you know, when somebody talks about this, when we say, but this is it now, where are you going with this? May I just take a look? I think we're good. Hang on, I think we've got a second mic coming. That's not a great start.
Hello, with me. That's much better.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about trends. I mean, is there more than one trend?
There is.
Or is AI everything?
Well, it's kind of underpinning everything. And funnily enough, one of the trends that I did make a note of to talk about was this idea that when you have, you know, Google Translate and whatnot, when you use machine translation, AI translation, everything seems to be AI. And then what happens when you use languages like smaller languages, you know, is that everything goes through English. And so therefore it would explain some of the problems that you have. So as the landscape is changing, a lot of our work is changing too. So instead of doing, you know, translating ourselves, we're doing the post-editing of machine translating or machine translation, which is, you know, not so bad in English. What you need a translator, obviously, to come in and fix some of the errors, but it's manageable. It does somehow make your work a little bit faster. But for those smaller languages that have to go through English, say from German to Slovenian, for example, or Czech, something like that, they have to go into English and then back in to the language that you're translating them into. And that causes a lot of issues in the sense that what comes out is really garbage, you know, and really does need to be retranslated by a professional translator.
How would you have interpreted nutment?
Well, I don't know. What was it interpreting?
You know, they quite said the nutment of the niece. I mean, it sounds like, you know, sanctions being in place.
Well, or just crazy, yeah.
But is this the sort of thing you're finding that as you said, you're talking about garbage? Mm-hmm. Are you finding this on an increasing basis?
Well, as I say, with English, it's not too bad. Some of those big resource languages where they have a lot of data to draw on, it's not so bad. It's just not even for all of the languages. So there's a few issues that come from that. For example, where English is the language into which everything has to go before it then gets translated into another language, you find that not only does it sort of cement the dominance of English as the main language, which is not ideal, the language that you get in your target text is really just a replication of English in many instances, translated into that third language. So it's not ideal. And AI can do a lot. It's a tool that we use often, but it really isn't something that you can rely on without a translator, you know, to oversee what's being produced.
I know this is something that Moitza is going to touch on as well when we get to you, the dominance of English and, as you put it, languages of lesser diffusion. But perhaps we should just focus on what you've been talking about there, Alison, for a minute. You're talking about how the work of the profession changes. And then, I mean, I identify with this as a journalist as well, because our profession is, again, trust me on this, over the past 30 years, it never stops changing. The idea that there's a golden age, that things were set in stone and then suddenly there was some massive disruption. In my experience, not true at all. It's constant change. But what's happening now, does that change how you feel professionally about what you do, and also in terms of simple things like job satisfaction?
Oh, definitely. I think there's a few things there. How do we see what we do? One of the issues that we have, and one of the trends that I noted down, is this impact of the global hype, and the media and everybody who's talking about technology. Certainly the large technology firms are pushing, the implementation of AI without any supervision or without any kind of ethical considerations, going too fast, not really considering the impacts on individuals, on societies, on culture as well. And so therefore it changes the landscape quite a lot. So it does change the work that we do, in the sense that, as I said, now there's a lot more, post-editing of machine translation, but it's also the effect of how we view ourselves and how other people view us. So the hype really affects this idea, I guess, that, you hear everywhere, that translators will be replaced. It's almost a foregone conclusion. People don't really sort of think it through. They think AI is brilliant, we can just use it, it works for everything, and don't think that, translating a legal document or a literary translation, for example, is very different to translating an application form or something that's, fairly formal. So there are instances where you can use it, but others where you really need to have a translator. And that's a hard message to get through, because everybody's so enamored of AI, and it can do so much. As I say, we use it, it's a tool, and we appreciate that it helps us become more efficient, but really, it's not the be-all and end-all, and we just need to be careful. So I think that that's a real problem that we feel, and in the fact that it's changing the work, but also changing how we see ourselves and how others see us as well. Because many translators find this constant renewal, this constant training to be a little bit exhausting. Now, that's probably the people who are a little bit older. I think we have a bit of a generational divide, where the older translators who've been translating for a number of years are really sometimes struggling to get on board with the technology and keep current. And as you say, it's constant, so it's exhausting. Younger people have a very different view to it. They love the technology. There is this idea that there's that sort of is the translating and interpreting profession a really good fit for young people? Sort of they're too technology oriented. They don't have the culture, and a lot of the studies help them to keep up that cultural side of things. The human skills are as important as the technical skills. So we've always had the cultural skills and the human skills, and now we have to take on the technical skills. And for the younger kids, it's much, much easier. And I think that they're a great generation coming through. They're really well equipped to be great translators, because not only are they across the technology in a way that some of us who didn't begin translating with technology are, they are really a generation that cares. They care deeply about society. They care deeply about the future. They want to make a contribution. And so that makes them ideal, because they will understand the ethical considerations around the implementation of AI, which are somehow being forgotten. But I do think sometimes it's a bit, there are certain people, certain sectors, certain companies who have an interest in pushing AI and not going slow enough to really consider the implementation. So we use it, we like it. It's not that we're against AI or technology in any way, but we just really know that it needs to be implemented in an ethical fashion, and it needs to be considerate of all sorts of issues. And it's something that needs to have a human overseeing the output.
You're talking about the post-editing of machine translation or AI translation. Would you rather, as translators and interpreters, be involved in things at an earlier stage Because I can see that there may be problems that get baked in by machines that are very, I mean, you know, how do you unbake a cake, for goodness sake?
That's a tricky one. I don't think that that we, you know, that it's really going to be possible, because you give the text to the AI and then it, you know, or the machine translation, and it comes out with a result. I guess where that intervention happens is where the machines, the engines are being built and what data they're being trained on. And that's the intervention, I guess, that you can make in that, you know, interim process.
How active are you in terms of, you're talking about these big companies, and you know, obviously we could just look at elements of the Magnificent Seven, the starters, in terms of this. But how active are you in talking to the likes of Google and Microsoft, and for goodness sake, the Mozilla Foundation, or however else it might be, in terms of maybe perhaps changing what they do and incorporating what you're doing?
That one is really, I guess, nibbling at the edges to some degree, just because it is sometimes hard to get them, you know, involved and to respond. And I think in a way, some of the attempts that we have made have really been quite complex or difficult, and not really got anywhere. And I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and we were talking about, there's a huge increase in real-time translation, and I'm talking about the Netflix and you know, and also I guess that was the one we were talking about. I'm trying to think, other digital platforms and social media. And so therefore, this kind of idea of talking to them, you know, it's really hard to get to the people you need to talk to, because there's so many layers. So in the country where they're working, there's some issues with Netflix around the rates and around, you know, the way they treat their translators and some of the conditions, which is a really big issue in the industry that also, you know, is difficult to address when it's so diverse and there's so many different realities. But, you know, it's hard to find the people that you need to speak to and to get them to respond. So, you know, it's one of those things we keep trying, but it's tricky.
And I know this is something Tina's going to be coming on to later, aren't you, Tina, with specifics with that. And again, it's something we all interface with one way or another. But again, I know that nobody wants to think doom and gloom, Alison. And again, when I look at my own profession, and particularly as a freelance, when things change, you're looking for the opportunities, not just, you know, oh my goodness, this particular line of work has gone. And believe me, as somebody who's been working for the BBC for 30 years, that happens on a regular basis. But, you know, again, there'll always be opportunities, there'll always be places which are underserved and need service, they need expertise. So what are you particularly optimistic about at the moment?
Optimistic about areas. I think audiovisual is a big area, and also I think what, you know, it's optimistic about the whole profession, in the sense that we have a big future. We can keep moving forward and looking for those areas where we can work. And I think that, you know, some of those issues around, oh, actually, that's not a positive, that's a negative, so we won't go there.
You can say it if you like.
Well, no, I'm trying to be positive, because I do think we need to be positive, and I do think we can be positive. I guess I'm thinking around the real place for us to find, I guess, some leverage, if for want of a better expression, is with the cultural areas. Those cultural skills are things that we have in spades, because we deal with, you know, communication, with intercultural communication, with accessibility and all those sorts of things. So we've been, you know, and literature, so we've got all of those cultural skills, and we can use those in tandem with the machine and AI translation. So it's important for us to really lean in to that side of our skills, because I think everybody's so focused on the tech, they've forgotten a little bit about that. And that's where we can really, I guess, add a lot and use the skills that we have to improve, you know, just the future and the way things are going. So I think we're ideally placed to, you know, to be, even if you're not translating, to be working in those kind of like advisory roles as well, language consultancy and things like that. We've got the skills, we've got the ability, and we have both the language, the technology, and the cultural skills in one, and that's a very powerful package.
Thank you, Alison. I'd encourage as well any of the panelists, if you ever want to chip in at any point, you know, just tip me the wink, and we can chip in, because I'm sure that there will be various things that people will want to say along the lines. I know you've all got your areas of speciality, which we will get to, and I'm going to get to Ivan at the moment. I'm just going to put my interpretation back on, but Ivan, I mean, I guess we can blame you for this, can't we? Is that fair? You are one of the fathers of AI. So, I mean, is this what we wanted? Is this what you wanted when you started off on this? Was this what you thought was going to happen?
Hello. This question wasn't exactly planned, but it's not a bad question. What happened with AI in the last few years actually exceeded everything that we did in the last 40 years. And it mostly exceeded this technology to the work of people, of ordinary people. Of course, I'm mostly speaking about generative AI, about large language models that have reached an unforeseen advancement. And right now, many people are quite concerned about it, about what's going to happen with their jobs, with their work. Of course, these advancements in technology change the way people work in many fields, and this also affects the field of translation. I agree with what Alison said. Maybe I will repeat it in a more simple way. As I understood, in regards to translation, AI will take over a part of the work. There will be a division of work where the machines will mostly do the routine things, more easy tasks, which it can do well, and that the tasks that don't have any complicated contexts attached to it. And this sort of translation will be available to everyone and will be cheaper and will be good enough. Even though this phrase, good enough, isn't quite well liked among translators. But the other situations that are more complex, so more complex tasks, and even creative translation, that's where human interaction with their expertise will be extremely important. So this division of work, which is quite clear, it is clear, but it's not quite clear where the line will be between these two types of tasks. And it's not quite clear what will happen with the development of generative AI. So this technology isn't brilliant right now. It still makes mistakes. And maybe a key component of this, or perhaps a question, whether generative AI will reach the general artificial intelligence, so general AI or AGI. this is where it's not quite clear when this will happen. Some people said it has already happened, but in several studies, it's quite clear that the generative AI also shows some sparks of general AI, but it's not quite clear. Thank you.
And thank you for that, Ivan. I mean, you talked as well, I mean, the things that we did talk about beforehand, and I mean, I do spring surprise questions on people. But there we go. But one which won't come as a surprise to you is you're talking about the division of work between humans and machines. Again, what we've seen in the past 40 years in Western society in general is deregulation. And what we have now in terms of the internet, technology, AI, is in part a consequence of an environment which has been largely deregulated. And we saw in the 90s the young internet companies at the time arguing very passionately that they should not be regulated, that this would stifle growth, it would stifle freedom. And we are now living with the consequences of that for good and for ill. When we're looking at this division between humans and machines, as you put it, do we actually need regulation? Do we actually need to say, this is what machines can do, and this is what machines can't do, and we need a human for? And if so, how do we go about that?
Another unexpected question. Thank you. Well, I would say the following. Perhaps I wouldn't fully agree with you on deregulation. The trend was not only, or is not only deregulation, also depending on which part of the world you have in mind. Europe is behaving differently from the US, and China is going its own way again, in a way. So in terms of artificial intelligence in Europe, trends are not going into the direction of deregulation. In Europe, nevertheless, we do have AI Act, which is a law on the regulation or basic underlying law for the regulation of artificial intelligence. And this is quite different from what is going on in the US, especially the latest trends after the last presidential elections. This difference between the US and Europe is increasing as a result. I do know a lot of colleagues of mine, also Americans, who say that the European trend is much better and that Europe is, in a way, a leader. This European piece of legislation on artificial intelligence has really a lot of consequences. One which I find very relevant for this discussion is this obligatory distinction between the contents that is created or generated by the machine, so synthetic context, and natural content, so for example, text, which is generated or created by a human being. And it would be nice if we could have some feedback from the audience. What do you think? The idea is that the reader who comes across a text on the internet has a possibility to check whether this is generated by a human being or by a machine. Does this represent important information, important distinction? What is it, in your opinion? Well, I can see some nodding in the audience. Thank you for the feedback. I work in a global partnership on artificial intelligence. It's a group of experts. Actually, there are several expert groups in this umbrella group, and my group is Expert AI, and we consensually agree that this is an important aspect of all the regulation on artificial intelligence in Europe. So it is now in the European legislation, but we don't know how this will be enacted, how it will be implemented. There are technical problems. However, it is a step in the right direction, in my opinion.
Thank you, Ivan. I'm going to give you another unexpected question. In fact, Alison is. And by the way, we will have time for some questions at the end. So I really would value you, coming forward at the end and asking some questions of the panel, because they like unexpected questions. The floor is yours, Alison.
Thank you. Yeah, my question is, I guess, we're concerned about the way that AI can degrade human skills, because the human skills are what separate us from the AI. And one area where we're very concerned is in the training sector, because the training sector is the most important sector to adapt quickly to the implementation of AI, just simply because there are concerns about what will happen when students let the AI do the learning for them and they don't learn how to do the entire process or really develop that deep understanding of what they're doing. So I guess I'm just asking if there's any way that you can sort of stop that from happening, as in how do we deal with the students letting the AI do the learning for them?
And you've got two microphones, so it'll be twice as good, the answer. Great, please.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think it is mainly the question to educators to somehow come up with rules that will work in direction of preventing that. And I myself, I'm also annoyed when I see examples of homeworks or projects or even papers or even scientific papers written by ChatGPT, when it takes a lot of time before you actually realize that it was generated mechanically, but then the contents is completely empty. Yes, so I agree.
Yeah, and Mojca, we were coming to you next anyway. And Ivan, thank you very much for your comments and fielding the unexpected. I appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed. Mojca, shall we start with directly responding to what Alison has said?
Thank you for this question, because this is something we in Ljubljana at the university we have been pondering on ever since COVID. After COVID, at the translation department, we found out that students were never late sending their homework. Their translations were always sent in due time, but some unusual mistakes occurred which were unknown before. And finally, also the professors at the university found out that our students are somehow too steps ahead of us technologically, because they are so-called digital natives. This AI for them, these tools are taken for granted by them, and they don't even think that the use of this can be understood as fraud. Therefore, the University of Ljubljana had to pull its act together and issue rules on the fair use of artificial intelligence. So each faculty has its set of rules defining and limiting the use of AI. At the translation department, department, we went back to paper and pen without translation dictionaries, and then also with the dictionaries. We have not excluded artificial intelligence use as such, but first we have to train a translator to be, who is really a tabula rasa, just a blank paper. And he or she has to start reading, understanding what the translation is, to start thinking as a translator, and only after that he or she will be able to support these processes with artificial intelligence. Now we have to accept that artificial intelligence exists, that we have to use it, but on the other hand, we have to train the users for its use. And this means take into account copyright, reasonable doubt into the results of artificial intelligence, and AI is only your tool. AI is not replacing you, but you are using it for simple processes to get results sooner. That's all. But of course, there are many processes. There are many disciplinary procedures in the University of Ljubljana, where students are shown that they have used artificial intelligence without quoting it as they are required. And as a result, they are failed and they have to face disciplinary commission. In one way, we are limiting, but I think it is for the good of the students. And these are the rules in our set of rules at the University of Ljubljana level. And then 26 members of the universities or faculties have their own set of rules, rules of procedures. So if you write a sociology paper in with AI, it's probably different if you use it for translation purposes. But each profession will have to be able to differentiate what is AI generated and what is human generated. And in the area of translation, we are doing quite well in this direction. It is a good tool, but it's still not as good to not to be detected. However, there are other areas, other professions. There are many students of mine in my in this hall. I hope they will not hold this against me. Sometimes students make even bigger mistakes than the AI because they don't consult the dictionaries, and dictionaries are already part of the AI. So don't hold it against me.
I'm not your student, but I'm scared now. I mean, it's a very interesting thing that I imagine you've had to do in the translation department. You've had to, I don't know if pivot is really the right word, but you've had to adapt very quickly to, as Ivan said, an environment which has changed very quickly. So I mean, you've given us a flavour there of how you've done that. But again, how much work has it been to, your topic, training future translators and interpreters? It's not just about keeping them honest in terms of, making sure they're not using AI in their homework, but it's also about preparing them for the profession that they are entering.
Ja, točno to. Hvala lepa. In v bistvu zdaj...
Yes, you're right. Absolutely. I feel to be a senior in this profession. And since my beginnings until today, the things in linguistics changed a lot. I started in 1997 with Professor Victor Ingui. He was an American professor, a physicist by profession, who started linguistic career, because he worked for NASA or CIA, or who worked on translation from Russian into English. I think Professor Bratko will concur that at the beginning the models were completely different. At the beginning, this machine translation was based on style and grammar. They had to find out valence and grammar models, because they believed that this will result in good translations. This has not come about. I started with pragmatics. Pragmatics is about context. It gives preference to context and always puts a language in the context, which then influences as a result or creates meaning. And very quickly we came to a corpus-supported language research. This is when the large language models were created, first for French and English. Slovene was included very soon. We had Corpus FIDA Plus, which was one of the first in Europe. The French still don't have a corpus of a similar kind, would be equally open and helpful for translators. And it does help translators a lot. And also translation solutions based on these big models, which were able to process a big number of patterns in the background. So these results were much better than the previous old model machine translations. So this progress which happened before Corona and after Corona dropped our jaw. But Alison mentioned that English is used as a real for peripheral languages, and then mistakes are generated on that basis. And these are minor things which are, for example, passive-active use of language, of tenses, not so much the declination. All this is somehow so awkward that you detect that the translation is somehow amiss. And this is because the AI is not able to work on synonymity. It is not based on the context, but on the basis of frequency. So, for example, you have a test where students are not supposed to cheat. For example, les cours in French are translated as competitions instead of shopping. And the translators were aware, students were aware of the difference because of the context, but they didn't take enough attention when they decided for an option proposed by an AI. And this happens for both translators as well as the users of translations. The translation department at the University of Ljubljana started in 1997 to support the translation of the acquis. The idea was to train non-literary translators. So today's market of translation is 97% non-literary translations. And there you can discuss about whether something is good enough or if something has to be top-notch. But for example, if you want a manual translated, you want to know how to use a thing, not you don't need Shakespeare language there, for example.
Thank you, Boitza. We could go deeper, but I do need to move along the panel now to Jan Christopher. And you mentioned literary translation there. And I've been reading a lot of works in translation recently Jan Christopher.
None of mine, I take it.
Actually, no, but why not?
Because they're translated into Norwegian, which you probably don't understand.
No, I do not.
So you need Google Translate or ChatGPT to read them.
But I've been reading Japanese novels, and I do speak Japanese to a reasonable level.
Yes.
But as I'm sure you're well aware, reading Japanese if you're non-native, at my best, I knew about 1,500 Chinese characters. You need about 3,000 really to read a newspaper with ease. So reading a page of a newspaper in Japan was a slow process for me. So I read people like Hideo Yokoyama in translation, and I'm very grateful to the translators. There we are. But I think you've highlighted something which is very important, which is that, you know, when we do read works in translation, that is a work of art in its own right. And it's a work of art that should be recognized and respected.
Yes, that's very true. I think one of the reasons that it isn't normally respected or understood is that translation is also a secondary and derivative art. And the general public, I don't think, realize how much creativity goes into actually literary translation. I'd like to challenge the... also, just to make a point, I'd like to just state that I don't regard an AI-generated translation as a translation. It's a computation that looks like a translation. Just outside that, so bad. I'd like to just read something to challenge our interpreters here a bit.
Very good. Is it another nutment?
No, it's not. It's the opposite, actually.
Very good.
Because I don't speak ancient Greek, so when I want to read the Odyssey by Homer, I depend on a translation. And in 2017, there were 3 English translations of that work. And the opening line, which I suppose many of you are acquainted with, in Anthony Verity's version, I believe he's a British translator, is "Tell me, Muse, of the man of many turns." It was also translated the same year by a South African translator, Richard Whittaker. "Tell me, Muse, of that resourceful man." So you have the man of many turns, you have that resourceful man, and then there's my personal favorite, the American Emily Wilson, "Tell me about a complicated man." I think the man of many turns is a pretty verbatim translation, and I think if you fed the original into ChatGPT, you would get something that sounded a bit like that. That resourceful man, that is quite a common interpretation. You'll find it in a lot of English translations. That a complicated man, I don't think ChatGPT would ever come up with that. And that, I think, is a very good illustration of what a human interpreter or translator brings to the work. I don't translate classical literature. I translate children's literature and genre literature, crime novels and stuff like that, which is regarded as easy literature. And probably, well, I know that those are the fields that publishers are looking at and say, well, that's easy, so maybe a machine can do that for us. But I think they're very wrong there.
But, I mean, again, it's disrespect for the... I mean, I feel quite passionately about this, Jan Christopher. Perhaps I shouldn't bring this, my personal feelings into it, but what
Please
heck?
do.
It's
yes.
Saturday morning.
We are persons.
But, you know, we get this stuff about novels of ideas and so forth, but what's wrong with storytelling?
Nothing at all. It's very important. We've been doing it since we sat around a campfire when we were Neanderthals, I believe. I wasn't there. My children say I was, but they're wrong. No, I think it's disrespectful to the person who actually wrote the text, because, I mean, even if you write stories, you're still putting effort and thought into it, and you're creating sentences that you want to run smoothly and you want it to be a pleasant experience to read. And it's disrespectful to the readers, because when you talk about sort of, oh, it's an adequate level, it's good enough for them, I think that's very arrogant. And of course, it's disrespectful to us, the translators, to the work we actually put into. I translate Peppa Pig. It's work.
Yeah.
I have to.
And anybody who's been a parent will be grateful that you did that.
Yeah, thank you.
I believe Henry wants to chip in here.
You have a slide.
Your microphone.
This is the best critic of children's translation. That's my daughter. She reads translation. She reads all the children's books in translation. And if it is not translated in a way that the kids are going to receive, AIs, I mean, anything that's illogical in their world, they're going to say, I don't want this. And this is the best way about how it is important to talk about the readers, not just the parents as readers, but as the kids as the readers, but also the fact that a lot of that is culturally embedded. And how do you transmit cultural divergence and diversity to a kid's world?
Yeah, well, you need the cultural context, obviously, and you need to know the culture you're translating from, and you need to know the culture you're translating into. So, yeah, it's even on a Peppa Pig level, it can be quite complex.
Absolutely, and AI cannot actually compete with that. By no means is going to be matching that.
I hope not.
We wanted to say something there, Alison. Alison wants to chip in as well. You're being chipped in on a lot here.
No, chipping in is fine, yes. As long as I'm not being chipped.
One would hope not. Do we have a working microphone?
Hello, that's working. That's
Great.
working. No, sorry about that. I just wanted to just say that translating the culture for children is the most important. They're the audience that need it most. So, and as you say, any parent who's ever had a small toddler and a book that they love, and Peppa Pig is loved by everyone. But I was just going to say, I was talking before about this idea that AI will degrade human skill, but it also seems that it might just degrade human expectation. We have an expectation that our literature will be good literature, you know, and if you buy a book that's written well in the original, you would really like the translation to be written well as well. And so therefore, you know, listening or reading a lot of these AI text is going to lower the bar for us, and we'll end up that, you know, we will be imitating the machines rather than the machines, and they're trying to imitate us. And I think that we should stick to our lanes, that, you know, the machines should be doing what they do best and we should be doing what we do best, and combining the two, as I say, that's a powerful combination.
I think you're absolutely right about that. I think human beings' ability to devolve is impressive in a way, and scary. And also, I think our tendency to imbue things with a sort of a personality, that we're polite to our ChatGPT. We say, oh, thank you very much, and could you please do this? And we're talking to a computer or a calculator, and a very advanced calculator, but we tend to sort of give something sort of spirited as an anthropomorphic tendency that we have, which I think is quite dangerous, actually, because it sort of lends it to some sort of credibility, or
Let's come back to where you were, a couple of notes that you sent to me and Christopher. I mean, I think this is the core of the issue here. You talked about the difficulty of gaining public recognition of the fact that a literary translation is actually the translator's intellectual property. So have you got ideas of how we can change that?
Well, the only way you can change that is to try to demonstrate it, like I did with my example here, and you have to reach out, and you have to. It's not just the readers, but it's also the lawmakers. It's other writers. I mean, I've met writers who are surprised to hear that. Oh gosh, is that intellectual property? I thought it was my intellectual property. Well, no, it's we're dividing this here. So we have to sort of be many places at the same time. We have to go to of course here I'm speaking to the congregation, so whatever I say is not going anywhere. But you have to try and go through newspapers, write chronicles. You have to lobby politicians to make them recognize that these are things that have to be regulated. You have to, and I think labeling would be a very good idea. Yes. Yeah.
Well, we're going to get onto that right now, if that's okay with you.
So,
Alan's got a mic already. Excellent, Alan. I mean, I was going to ask you the same question I asked Ivan, whether this is all your fault, but I think we've moved beyond that now. We'll go on to the labelling, shall we? And in terms of the labels, this has already been raised, of course, by Ivan. Jan Christopher has just said he'd welcome them. So why labels?
Well, one reason has already been presented by my colleagues, and it's that there is a difference between humans and machines, and we'd like to maintain that distinction. Well, at least I would, and perhaps there are those in the audience who are yearning for the day when there is no difference. No one makes any distinction whatsoever. That's not me. I think that we should decide here and now, no matter how they advance, the machines, no matter how humans advance, we are different. That's the first distinction that underlies labels on translation output. The other distinction is between professionals and non-professionals. We have sought for many decades to be recognized, we professional translators, to be recognized as part of a profession. We actually can look at artificial intelligence as an opportunity rather than an obstacle to this. So the standards body, ASTM International, that is standardizing these labels, which are professionally verified translation versus everything else, unverified translation. It's not a simple human versus machine. That is how we started out in November of 2021 when this project started. That's ancient history. A lot has happened since then. But now we need to recognize, as someone mentioned, that humans make mistakes as well, and students who are learning, who are not yet professionals, they may make some mistakes as serious as the mistakes by machines. And that's okay if they're learning and striving to become professionals. So, this is an opportunity for us to say the distinction is not whether a human is involved, whether a machine is involved, but whether a professional, a qualified professional human translator has verified the results before they go on to the consumer and takes responsibility, whether there is accountability. And this could be, drum roll, this could be an opportunity to dramatically raise the profile of the profession of translators.
I believe Jan Christopher has an angle on this.
Yes, when you say verification, or is it the translation has been verified by a human being, in the case of literary translation, that would be proof editing a machine-generated translation, which I guess in some ways you could say that you might end up with a pretty good result, but it's there's also the question of, okay, who holds the copyright to that result? Is it the publishing company who fed the text into the machine, or is it the people who created the machine, or is it the proof editor? And should proof editors have copyright? And it sounds very simple, but it's extremely complex and complicated, really.
Definitely. The group that's working on labels on translation output uses verification in a very broad sense. It ranges everything from a human translator producing the text and verifying their own work, self-checking, completely human. That's still verification. To post-editing of machine translation, to revision by a senior translator revising the work of another human translator. And all of that is verification, because we had to simplify this for the general public. We've tried over the last several years a number of labels, names for these labels, and this is the one that seems to communicate to the public without any extra explanation. So I'm not at all suggesting that you start post-editing machine translation.
So just to emphasize here, I mean, Alan did want to emphasize this. The mark is PVTQ. PVTQ, the certification mark associated with the label professionally verified translation, PVTQ.
Yes, why the Q?
Why the Q? Quality?
Quality, yes. And why did we started out looking at protecting the letters, the sequence of letters PVT, professionally verified translation. We hired a professional intellectual property attorney. If we want to be professionals, we need to respect other professionals. And they came back with an opinion, like a legal opinion, that we would have a lot of trouble protecting PVT. They suggested we add another letter, so to make it more distinctive. And we had a big debate within a meeting, a formal meeting of ASTM, an in-person meeting. It's so nice. I'm so glad we're here in person. And we'll be able to talk in person afterwards. And after hours of debate, a clear winner, and many proposals, a clear winner emerged, PVTQ. It's not an acronym as such. The P suggests professional, qualified professional. The V, this verification in a very broad sense. T for translation, and Q for the quality that results from the professional verifying that the translation meets the agreed-on specifications. That is the very, very broad definition of translation, deriving from functionalism in translation studies. So there's a lot of suggestive information associated with PVTQ, and our intellectual property attorney suggests that it will probably be protectable, and as a certification mark, which means that the organization that manages the mark doesn't put it on their own, cannot produce translations. They have to be a neutral third party, and they then set the rules for translators, translation companies, publishers to use that mark if the process, the accountability, and the qualifications are there.
And I think just quickly, Mojca would like to interject, Alan.
Ja, jaz bi imela samo vprašanje
I would have a question. What does this label serve? Is this just another label which increases the cost of the process and enables a certain agency to make money on translators? Because what I feel, taking into account the situation in Slovenia, so for example, translation is made by a translator, then it is edited by a proofer, and then by an editor. There is no need for a third party who would then make money on the work of the translator, because we know that literary translations are already poorly paid and literary translation is undervalued. And if on top of that you add additional costs, I really don't know what would that bring to more quality, or how would it work?
Thank you for that challenge. So I would say that if you follow an established procedure, a process, you have a translator and a reviser, for example, and a proofreader, then that result, that output, is verified. And the organization that has already hired those persons would be able to put the mark on it at no extra cost. Definitely not at extra cost, but providing an indicator of extra value. So we would see, basically, the labels team sees these marks and the labels as consumer protection and consumer information. The consumer of translation, it's becoming fairly well acknowledged that the general public, the consumers of images, have the right to know whether that image they're looking at is a real photograph or it's AI generated. That's becoming quite well established. Here, the question is the consumer. Do they have the right to know whether the translation they are reading has been professionally verified in the very broad sense that I explained? And I claim, our team claims, definitely it's a consumer right.
Thank you very much for that, Alan. I would say, as a consumer, this seems to me very much like the kind of labeling we would get on food and drink products. You know, you have a DOC, or you have the GI indicators, all these sort of things. There are certain consumers who will find that extremely valuable, and then there'll be other people who just want to get drunk as quickly and cheaply as possible. And maybe there is a translation equivalent. But Tina, I mean, one of the big fields we're seeing a lot of development in at the moment is audiovisual translation. I don't know about you, but if I'm watching something, as I said, Japanese is the one language I can do reasonably well. If I'm watching something Japanese, I find myself shouting at the screen sometimes because things are missed, or I think they're misinterpreted, or what have you. I'm sure everybody has that experience in their own native languages. But again, is there an opportunity here, or are we just talking about a deluge?
Can you clarify what you mean by deluge?
There's so much content now. And, you know, we were talking about the streamers in particular. There's so much, and we know that the quality is variable. So, you know, is there an opportunity here, or are these streamers just, you know, again, we're talking about some people just only being interested in price and quantity. You know, you can stream for $9.99 a month, you know, and never mind the quality, check the width, as they say.
I think the opportunity here is that people are becoming more aware and more interested in audiovisual translation as you see more different languages being represented in media, and like the streaming services provide, like suddenly Korean is very interesting, and there's translations from Korean into English, and you're talking about the accuracy of the translation, which barely happened before. So there's much more content, like you said, and much more variety in the languages represented. So that provides a forum for conversations about quality with the audience, and hopefully with the professionals, with the translators included in that conversation. So that is the positive side, but then the negative side of the deluge is that you have so much content and the people pushing that content just want it out there as quickly and as cheaply as possible, and then the translation aspect of it gets kind of lost in the shuffle, and you don't get as much time and you don't get as much information about the content you're translating or the opportunity to affect how the work is done. So the quality suffers or the quality varies, and there are frustrations on the translator side that if you can't do the work in a way that you would want to do it, then what's the point in any of this? And can we really serve the audience as well as we would like to? And there are lots of tensions, and it's a challenging field to be in, but I feel that it's an important field to be in, and it's kind of a display window for translation because so many people watch translated media, and that provides an opportunity for conversations about translation in general.
How has the relationship been developing with whether it's the streamers or the original content providers? I mean, because again, it's been a fast developing field, and I presume that the relations as well have been developing as you go along. So what have you seen changing in recent years?
Well, it's a huge and globalized business, and that affects the way translators do their work. And I think a typical situation would be that you have a freelance. Well, I specialize in subtitling, so I mostly speak about subtitling and subtitlers, and it's slightly different if you do dubbing. But I feel that the field is kind of dispersed. You have freelance translators working at home on their own. They work for a company, a translation company that has been hired by the content providers, and the connection between the translators and the people producing the content is tenuous or non-existent. So if you have a question about why is this the way it is, you don't have anyone to ask the question or have a discussion with about the content. And there are lots of situations where you would like to kind of throw around ideas, and you wonder what the exact meaning of this sentence is, or how you should interpret this, or what kind of tone you'd like. I mean, Jan's example from literary translations, that applies incredibly well to audiovisual translation as well. You interpret not just the words, but the entire program, and you try to match your translation or sort of squeeze your translation into the various constraints that exist, either the space on screen and the timing, or the lip movements of the characters, and sort of trying to so smoothly match the translation with everything else going on screen. And it's a challenging and it's a very creative task. And if you do it sitting at home alone on limited material, like maybe, I mean, you usually you have to have the video, but sometimes you have to work on a pre-created template, and that may limit your options for creativity. Sometimes you have to work through an intervening language, which is usually English, as we've discussed before. And then if you kind of don't have the opportunity to sort of have conversations with others, then that is a challenge. So those chains of production are becoming longer and more complex, and people don't have contact with their colleagues or the customers, and that can be a problem.
I mean, I totally recognize that. I mean, as a freelance journalist, we're more or less in the same boat. We have a group of, you're going to like this, I'm the father of the chapel of all the freelance BBC correspondents around the world. We have what's called a chapel in the National Union of Journalists in the UK, and I'm the father of the chapel. I'm only the father of the chapel because nobody else wanted to stick their head above the parapet. I was kind of willing to be shot at if necessary. So that's been okay. But I recognize the value of that. And we for years were trying to work out how do we support each other. And we have an email group. It's that simple. It's very, very old school, but we have an email group, and I serve as individually an agony uncle to the rest of the group. Anybody can sort of ask me anything, questions about, oh my goodness, this particular editor, I seem to be having a hard time with them. Is it right that they're asking me to do this? how can you develop those sort of things in the field that you're working in, Tina, the AV translation?
It's a challenge, and I hope that our associations, of course, can help with that, and that FIT as a global association can bring people together internationally, because it's a global business. So the translators also should network globally to kind of address shared challenges. But it's not easy because your situation, I recognize it, and this idea of sort of sharing concerns. But sometimes even that becomes difficult if the company you're working for doesn't release the names of your colleagues, if you don't know who the other translators are, and that happens disturbingly often. And I don't think it should. It's nobody's benefit that people don't know about their colleagues and can't ask questions and can't coordinate. And I know there was a situation in Finland that Finnish subtitlers wanted to work more together and wanted to kind of raise their voices together, and they didn't know each other very well. So they started watching programs on TV and collecting from the credits at the end of subtitles, collecting the names, and then doing detective work and trying to find those people, and then created a group on social media and an email list, and started working together. But the problem also is that there's so much. It's kind of like a revolving door that people come and people go. So you would have to keep doing that work all the time to reach the people. And another challenge is coming back to Jan's comments about copyright and intellectual property. That's a huge issue for audiovisual translators as well. And one very basic aspect of that the translator should be credited for their work. That thankfully that most often happens with literary translators, but it doesn't always happen with audiovisual translators. So you can't even find the credit at the end of the subtitles to do the detective work, to find the people. But of course, it's great to have associations, and hopefully people find their way to them. And social media can be good. Try to make yourself visible and try to sort of make people notice you and then get in touch with you and then start working together. But it's a long process, and it's a lot of work.
Thank you, Tina. I think that leads very nicely on to Victoria and her topic of continuous professional development. Again, when Tina's talking about how people in the profession work and interact or don't interact with each other, how much of a challenge is it to ensure that people do have the opportunities to develop in their profession?
Hvala lepa za vprašanje.
Well, thank you for the question. Then continuous professional development and training in all the topics we mentioned today seems to be relevant or marginalized. I focused on this area. I have been focusing on that for the last 20 years. I worked on that professionally, and I observed the situation. Yes, connecting among professionals. There are countries where translation studies exist. They have long tradition. There is a developed community of translators, of educators. There are other countries where they haven't reached that level, or there are countries where there are only few possibilities to study translation. So if you look around the world, you know that there are professionals who translate, who are trained as translators, who finish their studies, and there are those who, in your, often say it was an accident or an coincidence that I found myself working as a translator or perhaps even interpreter. We all need continuous professional development and training. Probably we understand that and respect that, especially if we are trained ourselves. And others, and I will be very critical, and those who know me know me to be a critical person, and sometimes they are very disappointed with that. But those who are not trained or have not have the adequate training can be quite aggressive and overbearing, whereas the translators are very the trained translators or the translators with knowledge are very cautious, and others somehow don't understand that this continuous professional training is necessary. I am speaking mostly about Slovenia. Perhaps I can touch about other countries later. But we are extremely lucky in Slovenia that we have a large number of associations and societies of translators and interpreters, and also specialized associations. Over the last 15 years, slowly, probably because of other reasons, we have also started developing continuous professional development and training for translators, also in combination with lifelong learning. So this giving the professionalism over to others, so this transfer of professional knowledge is the reason, is something which developed through the higher level of available trainings in Slovenia. At the beginning, I used to say that, I don't know, a company XY is giving training on the introduction on civil law. How come? How can they give quality, basic knowledge compared to a professional in a certain area? This professional would need understanding and knowledge not just of law, but also translation and so on. So maybe I was too deep.
I don't think so. I mean, we're at a specialist event here, aren't we? So I think we can be as deep as we want to be. But the other thing that you wanted to raise as well, I know, Victoria, was this idea that knowledge isn't necessarily visible, and that again we've touched on this, I think, already on the panel of raising awareness of the importance, and how it's really important right now, of raising the importance of what translators and interpreters do and what the profession does and what it offers. So have you got, I imagine you have great thoughts on what steps still need to be taken or what changes need to be made right now to do that?
Yes, you are right. Thank you for this idea. Yes, knowledge, know-how, sometimes actually we perceive it, but it's not seen from the outside. I don't mean this so much in the context of translators and interpreters, but mostly I have in mind the clients. Clients don't see that as something around them, this quality or knowledge like a car or a house. It is difficult for them to assess this knowledge or know-how or quality, and they don't care about how to assess it. So, for example, they believe that a lawyer or engineer or a doctor would be equally good translator just because they lived abroad, they have good command of foreign language and so on. And it is our know-how is not perceived by the client. What should we do? We are trying to connect this with the legal profession and the faculty of law or law schools where we have to know that obligatory professional development exists for court interpreters in Slovenia. It's a legal obligation. It is and this is something which is required and tested. And for that, we need good quality trainers. So it is not enough to be trained by, for example, any good professor at any other faculty, but it should be someone who understands what we do, because then we can discuss the theoretical basis for translation. It's not just about terminology. I cannot see neither in Slovenia nor abroad any standards put in place in that regard, and or at least quality standards, and how to evaluate such professional training which is needed to prove that somebody has knowledge in this area.
Thank you, Mojca. I think at this point we can. You mentioned court interpreters. I think it's only fair to pass the mic on to Henry. Henry, I mean, obviously your specialism is the court interpretation, but I know you also wanted to react to what everybody else has been saying here today. So how do you want to play this?
I don't know, mate. First, well, thank you very much for putting me in that position. I was expecting curly questions. I was expecting curly question. I didn't get one.
Yeah, well,
but that's all right. I think trying to summarize everybody is quite a difficult concept. But on the other hand, I think it's important to look at. Well, I'll try to. I've prepared a few slides, and I'll try to put everything together in a biased way, because it's mediated by me. And knowing some of you, what some of my fellow panelists, what they're going to say, I have prepared something. But partly is that I think people have talked about that anybody with 2 fingers or 2 hands are not capable of not anyone can play the piano. And now we have got automatic piano, quite in lots of hotels. And are they music? Would you consider them as music? And I think Jan certainly would say that they are not music, just like a machine translation is not a machine, it's not a translation. So I'm totally against the idea of human translators, because it's a tautology. Translators by definitions are humans, unless you're talking about other translations, which, in a technical world of DNA or something, they will have translators, or you will have other translators of any other features. But I think the human element that I would like to emphasize, I'm not going to embarrass myself by reading to you in Slovene.
Go on.
No. For those who can't read Slovene, it will be interpreted in English by our interpreters. This is an extract from the Ljubljana festival. And I think it's important to think about our work in other ways. We are everywhere. We are somehow, if you like, the canary in the coal mine. We have been more automated than other professions, perhaps. And so how to bring back our unique and our personal and unrepeatable part of language and of storytelling. Just like this forum, you would not have any other way of presenting this forum. You can have the same people, you can have the same instructions of what we're going to say, but it will never be the same. And that's important. And particularly, has it been finished? I didn't listen, thank you. And I think it's time for us to think about ourselves, but we also need to project the importance of why translators are important. We're too obsessed with the world being a mechanistic idea. We change, we put things together, we go like, oh, this part goes to that part, goes to that part, it's an interrelated, so we do that. But on the other hand, this is too complicated, so we need to simplify this. But actually, in order to make it more efficient, we can take this out and make it into an automation. We've completely forgotten the interlinking part and the consequences thereof. And just like Professor talked about, okay, you add more labels. What's going to happen? They're not going to pay any more. So if they're going to not pay any more, does it mean that the translators get less? The consequences of making a mechanistic assumptions of how our interaction is and how life works have lots of consequences. As I said before, anyone who has, this is a multilingual country, anyone who has multilingual children knows that they're not a large language model. My child is bilingual, polyglossia. She is not a large language model. It's not the fact that the more you feed her with something, the more she's likely to repeat it like a parrot. In fact, she's not a parrot at all. She's already arguing. And I was expecting, like the panel, that we don't know what the next curly question is going to come from. This is a very nice New Yorker article by another bilingual parent, and talks about how parenting is not a stochastic parrot. And this is important because the outcome, as Alan said, the outcome will always be different. Machine.
We could just, we're not quite sure what the stochastic parrot is saying there, Henry. I mean, do we need to get into the detail of this?
Sure.
Can we gloss over it?
It's firstly coined by Emily Bender, a linguist, who described AI chatbots and machine translation as stochastic parrot. In other words, they're repeating. Parrots are parrots, right? Parrots are universal. I'm sure parrots in Slovenia is the same as parrots in New Zealand. They behave the same way. We hope. We may not be true. But they repeat, often without thinking, right? Because the parrots don't understand Slovene, or parrot doesn't understand English. And it will repeat. It repeats based on frequency, based on statistic, hence the stochastic concept. And is machine translation or large language model or AI chatbot stochastic parrots? Because they have no creativity. And if they do have creativity, do we believe their creativity? I know Ivan is dying to reply. Would you like to stop me?
I don't think it's really about what was on the screen. I mean, I couldn't read it either, but it's more about the concepts that Henry is raising here, I think.
That's right. The screen is only for the audience.
We didn't want to really get into big sort of PowerPoint presentations, and you know, the idea was just to have something pretty to look at while Henry's talking. I think that was about the size of it.
Exactly. Instead of looking at me, that's the most important part. But yeah, it is. And then the other thing, as a result of that, is we like to be linear. We like life to be simple. And so the concept of dichotomy or linearity is that things are in opposition. So the tech people would like us to believe that singularity is tomorrow. So we would, which is never true. But on the other hand, we would say, in order to protect ourselves, instead of making a change to our profession, we just need to go, okay, machine cannot do this, or non-professional cannot do this, or try to set up barriers. Is that the right answer? Is that the only answer? And that's the question that, particularly in the legal field, every jurisdiction will try to find ways to certify or credit translators and interpreters if they are of any meaningful ideas. And because it is important, it's one of the domains of life that people think of, that language is important. But actually, language is important everywhere. So these guys would want to tell you that singularities is tomorrow, but it's not. At best, they're hype. At worst, they're lying to you. They're lying to you because they want more money. Because anyone who projects that technology or anything that can behave like this is simply not true. Biology doesn't behave like this. Virus doesn't behave like this. Language doesn't behave like this. Humans don't behave like this. This is only to inflate their share prices. Is law important? Is regulation important? It is. And that's what Alan's point. But in order to protect copyright or otherwise, we do need consensus. And when we have treaties, consensus are difficult to achieve. And of course, a lot of the time, the original construct of a good idea going through committees, we all know what committees do to good ideas.
You sit on one, don't you?
Standards. Yes, we want standards, but don't forget the whole idea why we got into this situation where we are not respected, that machine translation is doing a lot of the work, which has got the problem of training, as Alison has mentioned, is that we have this idea of a standard, of a correct answer. There is a correct answer to a translation. This term means the other term in the other language. Once you have that, unfortunately, a lot of us are conformists. So how often when you are doing machine translation or machine augmented translation, SCIT, that you would actually say that term is wrong? We are more likely to criticize our colleagues than to criticize a machine. The concept of automation inertia. So it makes students in particular much more restricted, much less creative in thinking about, can I translate this or can I understand this in a slightly different way? We'll stop there, shall we?
I think we could, actually. I mean, I think basically what Henry has done there is to sum up a lot of what we've talked about. I think he's thrown a few cats among the pigeons.
That's deliberate.
Yeah, which is what we want. But we have, if I've got my timings correct, Matteo, I think we've got about 10 minutes for questions, have we? Does that sound about right? Yeah, so we've got 10 minutes for questions. Otherwise, I can throw the floor open to the panel and they can fight among each other. But I would very much like to hear from the audience. If there's anybody in the audience who'd like to raise something or ask something of any member of the panel, please raise your hand. We will get a microphone to you.
Imamo samo še eno obvestilce prej. Predno vas, spoštovana publika, povabim k razpravi, prosim volilno komisijo, da zapusti dvorano in ugotovi rezultate volitev, ki vam jih razkrijemo kasneje. Pa še eno drobno obvestilce, na QR kodi, ki jo nosite okoli vratu, tam dobite vse podatke o forumu. Torej, prepričana sem, da so se vam ob predstavljenih temah porodila mnoga vprašanja, morda komentarji, ki bi jih želeli podeliti. Vas pa prosim, da vsi, ki želite besedo, počakate na mikrofon, da se bodo vse misli jasno slišale. Spoštovani strokovnjaki v dvorani, izvolite.
Do we have a question from the floor? Excellent. Please go ahead.
Se me sliši? Ja.
Can you hear me now? Great. My name is Jana Zidar. I'm a conference interpreter and translator, also the member of the Slovenian Association of Interpreters, conference interpreters. Thank you to Victoria. Thank you to all the panelists for sharing your ideas and views, all from their own fields. And I think we have heard the most topical question answered. The need for translators and interpreters still exists, that we are still welcome, needed, and appreciated. And thank you, Guy, for your applause at the beginning. This means a lot to us. All over, we hear today that we are becoming useless as translators and interpreters. And then we read that the AI technology companies are in lobbying more successful than, for example, those who sell oil. So this means that there is incredible lobbying to spread the use of AI, but to what purpose, for what tasks, and where? Well, I think that all the panelists explained and underlined that AI can do really a lot of things, and we as professionals know what it can do, and we are aware of the traps of the usage opportunities. But what about the audience? We as associations are trying to empower not only our members, but also the public, the general public. For example, we as professionals know the limits and the opportunities given by AI, but we know its limitations. How about our clients? How about the general public? Do we have an idea how to share this knowledge about the usefulness of translating and interpreting as a profession for them? AI can be also an opportunity for us. So we have the incredible augmentation of audio-visual contents and so on. Cannot this be used to explain that translation is not machine translation, that the machine translation is never a real translation? I criticize the term itself because machine translation is not a translation because it doesn't follow the translation process. So what can we do as professionals, as associations of professionals, to raise the awareness among the general public what translation and interpreting means? I hope I was not too long.
Thank you very much. Okay, Victoria, you obviously want to tackle this one, so please go ahead.
Hvala lepa.
Thank you. Thank you to Jana Zidar Fortemar, distinguished colleague. This is the point I really wanted to raise, but perhaps I was not clear enough. In my opinion, the most important thing is to communicate with the clients and explain to the clients the importance of professional knowledge about translation. When I talked about knowledge, I meant that knowledge of translation process, that it is not something taken for granted and produced by machines, but that the training process of training translators should become visible. For example, this is visible when it comes to production of jeans. We have been wearing jeans for decades, and until recently we have not learned about the process of making jeans. So this process, which results in professionalism, has to become visible and understandable, and we should raise the awareness among the clients about that, and I hope we will get into that direction.
I think young Christopher, then Tina, would like to contribute as well. Or Tina, you can go first if you've got the mic, but anyway.
Okay. Yes, I think it would be really wonderful if in some probably not too distant future, when they start publishing novels and translations that have been either AI generated or have some element of AI generation in them, they should have a label. You mentioned it, like the cigarette packs. Reading AI generated linguistic material can be very damaging and harmful to your sense of language.
Tina,
Thank you, Jan.
follow that.
How can I? I want to take back my request for a turn. No, that's a nice idea, and I'm all for it. I didn't have a suggestion anywhere nearly as good as yours. I just wanted to acknowledge the question because I think this is really important, and it's important for us as translators and people in the field to engage, I think, with the general audience in whatever way we can think of, wherever people are and people who might be potentially interested in translation, to have those conversations. And also maybe to not be afraid of negative feedback, because we have many explanations for why translation quality sometimes suffers. So having those conversations, and I often try to encourage people, like my students, for example, when I give lectures, I encourage them to be active consumers. And if they see bad translations, please complain, so that we have the opportunity to explain why they are bad and what we should do to make them better, and to show the people serving those bad translations that people care. Because quite often you hear from someone who uses AI. There was a story in Finnish news recently about a book that was translated by AI, and one of the comments from the publisher was, well, the audience doesn't seem to care. I think we should work with the audience to encourage them to show that they care. And another very quick point, coming from academia, I do hope that researchers could work with practitioners to show how research can indicate, because sometimes the audience doesn't know themselves that things are not going quite well, but research can show, audience research can show that they are struggling or misinterpreting things. So hopefully that could provide evidence to fortify that conversation with the audiences and bring more visibility to all the problems that can happen, even if people don't realize it themselves.
I think that's it for comments from the panel, or have we got any more? Were you looking intent, Moitza, or no, not on this occasion? Very good. I think we're more or less to time, aren't we, Matteo? But I think, can we have one very, very, very quick question? Yes, I can see there's a hand up in the front row. Just over here, please. But it needs to be quick, please.
About regulation and also about labeling. I just wanted to ask you if it's possible just to consider 2 or 3 ISO standards in this work. We have ISO 17100, where it is specifically, you have a review and also revision, so 2 levels of verification, and also legal translation and legal interpreting. So I think this is could be a good basis, and not to have too many regulations or labels, but have an international standard and work on that. Is it?
Alan, this is clearly one for you to field.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it still on?
Yes, on.
So I was, actually, we should talk during the lunch, because we specifically refer to ISO 17100 and its sister standards in ASTM. Point well taken. We don't want to duplicate these standards, but we think there could be a separate ISO technical report that adds the labels to the existing standard. And since I have the microphone, I can't resist.
Go for it.
Yeah.
You're going to sing, aren't you?
For sure. The question of cost, when I was talking about no added cost, I was talking about not adding to the cost of production. To produce a professionally verified translation and not label it versus producing a professionally verified translation, adding the label. Adding the label doesn't cost any extra for the production team, but it should bring in more money from the buyers because professionally verified translation is more expensive than unverified, and it's worth it.
Yeah, value. I did see, I mean, I know I've got to wrap it up, Matteo, but I did see one hand up over there, and I hate to disappoint a hand in because you know how it is with questions at conferences. You normally don't get any questions, so it's lovely to have some. Thank you for contributing. If you could make it very brief, please.
Yeah, it's more of a comment, actually. Almost 20 years ago, I attended American Translators Association conference, where the opening statement was like, and this goes, well, describes the perception of the public. This is a quote: "Translation is like toilet paper. People only notice it when it's not there." And for the majority of people, that's true. I just wanted to, well, to the younger colleagues, say that it's really important to find your niche. I meet people randomly at, pubs, and when they tell me that they're translators, I ask them, what languages do you do? They give me 3 to 5 languages. And I say, what industry? And then they're like, oh, everything. Marketing, medical, legal, they do everything. And I'm thinking, you're not getting a lot of well-paid work, obviously. I think the key word is quality assurance. I've been working in localization for a long time. Over there, people are talking about transcreation, not only translation. Why? Because in marketing, it's about the effect the message is supposed to, leave with the audience, with the reader, with the consumer. So, yeah, I think we'll be using AI. And a side note, I think the very name of it, artificial intelligence, is not very good, because it's not really artificial and it's not really intelligence. It's just predictive text based on computation. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment. And I really am going to wrap it up now. Thank you for your patience, Matteo. I appreciate that very much. But thank you also to the contributions of everyone on the panel. I mean, personally, I could have gone longer, but, my tummy's rumbling. I imagine everybody else has got something of the same. But as you know, there is going to be time over lunch for discussions. I'm sure everybody here you are all going to be delighted to be buttonholed and dragged into conversations, aren't you? Lots of nods on the panel. One more thing I must do. I started by apologizing to my colleagues in the interpretation booth and by saying how much I appreciate the work of everybody in the profession here. I just want to say again, thank you to the colleagues at the back today. Without you, we are considerably less. Matteo, over to you.
Thank you. Spoštovano občinstvo, hvala za vaše sodelovanje, vprašanja.
Dear guests, thank you for your cooperation, for your participation, for your questions. I think this was a very valuable addition to our discussion of our forum. Now I would like to ask Mr. Dejan Premc, the member of the SCIT Board of Elections, to please announce the results.
No, zdaj pa dela. Se pravičujem, I'm so sorry. Torej, lepo pozdravljeni člani Združenja stalnih tolmačev in pravnih prevajalcev Slovenije.
Thank you on behalf of the association SCIT, Legal Translators and court interpreters to had. Today we had membership elections. There are 100 members in our association and who voted. 27. The president of the board, the management board, once again, it is Mrs. Victoria Osolnik-Kunz. I congratulate her on re-election. This is certainly a confirmation of good work in the past, and we hope you will continue at the same pace and equally successful. The members of the management board, Brina Zapušek, secretary, Jasna Uršič, Tanja Dolar-Božič, and myself, other members. I congratulate the entire management. The president of the supervisory board, Alexander Forsten, members of the supervisory board. I congratulate all three. The president of the honorary court, with two members, I congratulate all of them. The president of the education committee, Masha Žura, and then Alexandra Hribar and Mojca Ceferin as members of the education or training board. And I wish all our members great success in the future work, and I hope we will continue meeting in such great numbers. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Premec, thank you very much. And of course, sincere congratulations to all of the newly elected members of the SCIT Association. Dear all, although the discussion in this hall is coming to an end, there is this final act waiting for us in the entrance hall. The next hour is meant for the banquet, but also and mainly to exchange of experiences, to making new contacts, and also business opportunities, shortly networking, or better said, connecting. And even if you have different plans, I would like to warmly invite you and would be delighted to have you with us for the next hour. Before we step into the fore of today's international gathering, I'd like to ask to the floor my colleague to thank today's speakers with a traditional gift.
Thank you. Oh, I know what it is. Decorated bake.
Iskrena hvala, spoštovani.
Sincerely, thank you, dear speakers. And now I would like to thank the hostess of this event with a beautiful bouquet of flowers.
Okay.
I need to use this opportunity. I'm sorry. Well, you don't mind that I speak in English now. I'm terribly sorry. I should have spoken in Slovene. Never mind. I'd really love to thank at this moment my and our lovely students who are here. These are my children. I'm so proud of them. Really, they helped me so much in creating this wonderful event. So a big thank you to them as well, please. In hvala lepa, zdaj pa v slovenščini.
And thank you for coming, for being with us. And now I'm giving the floor to my colleague Mateja Stražar to formally complete this event.
Na koncu naj izrečem zahvalo.
Yes, at the final end, let me say thank you also to the FIT members, to the Faculty of Arts of Ljubljana for the partial financial support, to the Academy of Theatre, Radio, Film and Television in Ljubljana for partial technical support for the realization of today's event, and to the master students from the studies of from German studies, from the Faculty of Arts, the board of the SCIT Association for their cooperation and support, and to all of those who helped make this event happen, as well as to all of the family members. And dear audience, I would like to invite you to join us. Thank you.